Entergy provides much more than power. We support science and engineering at local schools to build a brighter path to better jobs and help prepare the next generation. Because together, we power life. Entergy.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
The raise is the one area, the teacher raise, where you'll find bipartisan agreement.
Lawmakers moving forward on several proposed bills.
So unemployment is down.
Shreveport Mayor Adrian Perkins recaps his first 100 days in office.
We learned something about the depth of our common bonds.
The threat against the heart of Paris and what it reminds us about our culture. Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Williams.
And I'm Andre Moreau. Thanks so much for being here. Much more on those top stories in a moment. But first, on this week's edition of SWI, a look at other headlines making news around Louisiana. After decades of planning, ground has finally broken on construction of the Comite River Diversion Canal in northern East Baton Rouge Parish. In talks since the flood of 1983, the floods of 2016 brought renewed attention for the need for a canal. The canal would redirect high water from the Comite River and several bayous into the Mississippi River during an emergency. The project got more than $340 million in federal funding this year. An abortion clinic in the state wants the Supreme Court to strike down regulations that leave the state with just one clinic. A divided high court had previously agreed to block the law pending a full review of the case. An appeal filed this week with the court says the justices should now take the next step and declare the law an unconstitutional burden on the rights of women seeking an abortion. A crowdfunding campaign for the 3 African-American churches in St. Landry Parish, gutted by arson in recent weeks, is urging people not to forget the plight of these small churches in the aftermath of the fire that ravaged Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Hillary Clinton tweeted, "As we hold Paris in our hearts, let's also send some love to our neighbors in Louisiana." A proposal to ban the creation of most new freestanding emergency rooms in the state has won support from state senators. There's concern the ERs threaten the survival of fragile rural hospitals. Senate Health and Welfare Chairman Fred Mills, a Republican from Parks in St. Martin Parish, says standalone ERs cherry-pick services that generate the most money from patients. He says rural areas can't compete, and this bill protects them. The Lieutenant Governor's office is looking at locations for the state's new Civil Rights Trail. The trail is planned to tell the story of Louisiana's role in the civil rights movement. Meetings begin next Monday in New Orleans and Hammond and continue in cities statewide for the next month. The trail is expected to become a big part of the state's tourism industry. It was a blockbuster week of job changes for LSU athletics. Men's basketball coach Will Wade was reinstated after being suspended by LSU for declining to meet with the school regarding his involvement in that FBI investigation.
The next day, athletic director Joe Oliva was out and reassigned to the president's office. LSU quickly named Scott Woodard the athletic director at Texas A&M to replace Oliva. Woodard is an LSU grad and says the job is like coming home.
A shortened holiday week meant a flurry of activity at the Capitol, a number of bills and issues brought up, but not enough time to know just how they will play out. Well, how is the session evolving 2 weeks in? I talked with one of the state's top reporters and political watchdogs to get their take. Barry Erwin, counsel for Better Louisiana, and Greg Hilburn, USA Today Network. We've got a political reporter and political watchdog here to talk about the first couple of weeks of the Capitol. What have you seen in the first few weeks of the session?
Well, to me, it's been mostly quiet. I think the biggest deal to me that's happened so far is they kind of figured out how much money the state's got to spend. That shouldn't be in question, but it was for a while.
It was for a long time.
Turned out we know how much money that the state has available. It's not as much as the governor wanted. It's not as much as he put in his budget, but it's a number, and that kind of cleared a roadblock that at least now we can go and argue about other things.
And they did it quicker than maybe they would have had to have done it, because they were talking about May and then later, which would have been kind of crazy. What about you, Greg?
I think they wanted to, they just wanted to, they wanted to make sure the governor wasn't able to put it in his, in his executive budget early on. Right. I think was part of it. And but they do have, I think it's about 120 million more than was expected for next year. And this is a compressed, an 8-week session. So although it was slow the first, everybody finding their feet the first week, just this week I've noticed, the committees, they're full, chock full of bills. So I mean, there's action every day now.
And some of the things have been things that made big noise and then either quickly crashed and burned or stalled, or they haven't really come up yet. The billboard ban, abortion bills, public school funding, these were all big things. Minimum wage. Let's start with the billboard ban.
Well, a long time
ago.
That
was a crash and burn, I
People
guess.
don't even remember this. There was a big controversy when Buddy Roemer was the governor about not putting billboards up on I-49 and all of that type of thing. Yeah, so we've had this kind of debate before, but I think this has been driven now by the fact that there's a billboard every 20 feet, it looks like, and most of them have to do with personal injury lawyers, and I think some of that's kind of playing into the thing. But it obviously didn't go very far.
Didn't go very far. Abortion bills starting to come to the surface now.
The first big one came and cleared committee this week. That was Representative Katrina Jackson's constitutional amendment in which she'll ask voters to vote on, to say there is no provision within the state constitution that either guarantees an abortion or guarantees funding for an abortion. Now, it's largely completely symbolic as long as federal law is in place, Roe v. Wade, because federal law supersedes state law. But it's done if Roe versus Wade was ever overturned, or then it could come into play.
Have you noticed a different, I'll just call it mood, this year compared to all of the things that happened last year during the sessions?
Well, there's less. There's still a lot of politics, and they'll be taking shots at each other, but there's less legitimate stress over budget cuts, the physical cliff. So there's absolutely less legitimate stress, but they'll gin up plenty of artificial stress as it moves along.
Absolutely. They always find something to fight about. That's really not an issue. But I totally agree. I mean, we've had that cloud hanging over us for years. I mean, it was years. And finally, that's been removed. And so now we can move on to other things to argue about.
Now, some people will say that during a campaign year that people are a little softer. They won't try to push things that much. And then just recently I heard, oh, no, it can be the opposite. Things can really go to the end, really, and make it tough. What is your take on that?
Well, I think usually in an election year, people don't want to stick their necks out too far because you don't know, what might happen. I mean, there's still things that you can have some push button or hot button issues that get you attention and get things out there, but they don't necessarily get you into any political trouble if something happens. But I think the bigger deal is you're probably not going to see that many big pieces of legislation. I mean, there's a lot of tax bills in there, for instance, a lot of them that I think our group would say would do some good things. You're not going to see any of them pass by and large. We'll talk about the gasoline tax maybe separately, but I think people just want to play it safe for the most part.
Well, I want to make sure I know what you're talking about, but I was going to mention public school funding. That's going to be a big deal. And then, of course, now that LSU has sent out this survey saying that a vast majority of Louisianians support a minimum wage hike and a raise for teachers, 81 and 88%. So that is part of the conversation that's being used to see, told you so, this is what the state wants.
So I think the raise is the one area, the teacher raise, where you'll find bipartisan agreement, and I think we can safely say that's going to happen. The minimum wage, though, the LSU survey clearly showed Louisiana wants a higher minimum wage than the federal mandate of $7.25 an hour. I still think it's its passage is unlikely. I think it will be held up in the House Labor Committee. It gets out of the Senate and then stalls in the House. I think the governor will actually, I believe, testify in favor of that bill. It may be the only bill he testifies in favor for this, and he'll use this as ammunition. This clear clear sentiment that Louisiana wants a higher minimum wage, and if there was a Republican in office, that might pass, but not this time. I don't think.
How has Arkansas done what they've done, really pushing their minimum wage up?
I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I mean, it's one of those things where typically in southern conservative kind of red states, you don't see those types of things, and I'm not exactly sure how Arkansas has been able to do that.
Well, they let the people vote on it. It was popular there too, and same in Missouri, maybe. I can't. But our neighbors now, and that's what the governor would like. It's Senator Troy Carter's bill has the minimum wage bill, and it is also it's an amendment, a constitutional amendment that would allow the people to vote on it. Of course, that takes 2/3 in both chambers to get to the people. So
right.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think that makes it a pretty tough hurdle myself.
Yeah. Okay. You alluded to the gas tax. Reshaped LC4 is the moniker that people will want you, at least those pushing this will want you to remember. And your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they're going to make a big push. We actually had one a couple of years ago to raise it 17 cents. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot put out there about the need for infrastructure. If you live in Baton Rouge, you know about it. If you live in Lafayette, Shreveport, you want I-49. If you live in Lake Charles, they got a bridge issue over there too. So clearly, there's been pressure building for it. It's a pretty big bite. Certainly, what we talked about 2 years ago, 17 cents. This is a different approach. It's
more
kind
of
of
a trickle
phased-in
effect
approach. Yeah. Starting smaller and then like a couple of cents every other year to kind of move it up to a more significant level. You know, I have a hard time thinking that something like this passes during an election year because it's something that can be very easily used against you, you would think, but it could very well be setting the stage for what I do think will be an election issue and maybe see it, next year in the legislature too.
Anything else that's on the frying pan?
No, I don't. I just can't imagine that the gas. Any tax will pass during an election year. I just don't think they'll risk it. I do think there may be some tax reductions that pass. They're trying to reinstate some of the sales tax holidays.
Right.
Second Amendment, back to school.
Right.
There's several of them, and that bill is already cleared a committee. It may meet some resistance, but I don't think there'll be any additional taxes of consequence.
It's too easy in an election year and too recent for them to use anything against you. And when you add up the dollars, you can do it over a 10-year period, and they say they raised your taxes $1 billion, and nobody wants that.
Well, of course, none of the roads would be complete this afternoon, so still give yourself another hour and a half to get where you're going.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, Barry. See you. Thank you.
Adrian Perkins, a Shreveport native, a West Point and Harvard graduate, was a political novice when he entered the race to be Shreveport's next mayor. When the dust settled, though, he would go head-to-head with a well-known incumbent and win in a landslide, convincing voters he has a fresh vision for the city. Distinguished West Point graduate, a law degree from Harvard, a veteran earning the Bronze Star. Adrian Perkins is just 33 years old, but has built quite a resume and says deciding to come back home was an easy decision.
I've always loved home. Even growing up in Shreveport, it was an incredible environment. I mean, despite us growing up in like a low-income, high-crime area, I was still surrounded by a lot of love from my family, a lot of support from my neighborhood teachers, mentors.
Now just settling into his first elected office as mayor of Shreveport.
I wanted to serve. I was much more interested in serving than practicing law, so I went and talked to the citizens of Shreveport. I did a bit of a preliminary assessment period, and the citizens of Shreveport wanted change.
Perkins believes change is the only way to move the state's third largest city forward, helping it grow and prosper. He says on day one, he knew he had to hit the ground running.
We have, some public safety issues. Economic development is something that the city wants to see, jobs. I kind of expected it going in, and I knew this wouldn't be easy at all, but that's exactly why I stepped up.
First, taking a look at the city's balanced budget that wasn't what it seemed.
We had $213 million of revenue, but we had $219 million of expenditures. So to cover that gap, to make the budget look balanced, they used the reserve funds, which had our reserve amounts very, very low. So in order to replenish the reserves and put the city back on solid foundation fiscally, we had to figure out a way to generate revenue. And one of those ways was to stop subsidizing our public works department.
Perkins wanted a nearly $20 clean city user fee, but the council voted it down. They agreed to just $7 for garbage collection.
We proposed an $18 sanitation fee that we knew for the long term would make us solvent for a very long time, and we wouldn't have to go back to the citizens to ask for money. But the city council reduced that number in negotiations, which we accept. You know, it's I have a city council to keep our numbers in check, and that's okay. We'll figure out ways to make sure we cut the budget costs and we become balanced.
Before even being elected, beating incumbent Mayor Ollie Tyler by a wide margin, Perkins began working on an aggressive plan for what he wanted the city to look like 100 days after he took office.
I ran on a platform to make sure that our city was safer and that our city had jobs. There was opportunity there, and all of that was going to be leveraged with technology. So I had to start putting those building blocks in place as soon as I possibly could. And within the first 100 days, that's what all of our energy has been focused on, kind of those three tiers.
He says crime is down his first 3 months in office.
So crime numbers are down across the board. All violent crime numbers are down. The community is safer statistically, but that wasn't our challenge. Our challenge was to make the people in the community feel safe. So that's where community-oriented policing comes in. So the people in the community see police officers more. Not police officers just driving down main thoroughfares, but getting out of the cars, talking to the grandparents sitting on the porch, talking to the kids playing in the street.
And Perkins says more Shreveporters are working.
So unemployment is down, and that's something very much for us to celebrate in Shreveport, but we don't want unemployment to just go down. We want to bring in livable wage jobs in Shreveport. A lot of our citizens are getting service sector jobs, but what we want to really pursue are those manufacturing jobs and those tech jobs that employees make very good wages.
Perkins says a big part of his position as mayor is promoting the city.
To me, I'm the #1 cheerleader for Shreveport, and that has a lot to do with perception. I feel like I'm always marketing our city to tell people, to reassure people that Shreveport is a safe community, that there are opportunities in Shreveport. We have a lot of good things, whether it's our natural assets, considering a river runs straight through Shreveport, our infrastructure, we have 2 interstate, there's an Air Force base, and other things that we have in our area.
He is a West Point graduate, he is a Harvard Law graduate, and he is representing the city of Shreveport as our new mayor.
Mayor Perkins spent a couple days in Baton Rouge this week. Tuesday, he was recognized by the state Senate.
Wish you the best. We want to work with you, and we want to make Shreveport the best it can be. So thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you here at the state capitol today.
He was making his rounds as a part of the so-called cheerleading or marketing of Shreveport, meeting with the mayor of Baton Rouge, the president of LSU, F. King Alexander, talking with officials at Southern University about their engineering program, and meeting with officials at Walk-Ons, the Louisiana-based restaurant that sponsors Shreveport's Independence Bowl. The combat veteran who did 3 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan says much of his leadership training came literally under fire. And he says he knows his on-the-job training while mayor might not always be easy, but he says he'll remain focused on what's best for Shreveport. What do you say to the naysayers who say, who is this 32, 33-year-old person or, coming in here trying to make all these changes, making all these waves? What's wrong with the way that we have been doing things as far as trying to go forward?
I say that, there was a time for change, and the people of Shreveport called for that very loudly in the election. So the way that things was not working. For us to compete in this very competitive global environment when it comes to jobs, we need to make sure that we're at the cutting edge of recruiting, and we're at the cutting edge of infrastructure and all the things that cities are really building up on to attract that talent. So I say to them that, the citizens call for change. That's exactly what I'm going to deliver to them.
To add to his many accolades, in 2003, Perkins was voted the first African-American president at West Point.
Now to the big story in Paris this week. The stunned on the scene watched in anguish, as did many millions more around the globe. Fire raging through the famed Notre Dame Cathedral at the start of the most significant week of the year for Catholics. The cause of the blaze is unclear, but authorities do not currently suspect arson or terrorism. Perhaps the most famous church in the world went 12 rounds with a relentless fire, and when it was over, the quintessential cathedral was staggered and scorched, but standing. Notre Dame was undergoing renovations and suffered colossal damages. But as the fire was finally extinguished Tuesday morning, resolve seemed to replace some of the shock and despair that had left so many numb. Cardinal Vincent Nichols, Archbishop of Westminster in England, tweeted, "This is a disaster that touches their very soul."
Collectivement,
French President Emmanuel Macron told his nation, "It is up to us to convert this disaster into an opportunity, to come together and become better than we are. It is up to us to find the thread of our national project."
The body of the church, it doesn't appear that it was damaged too much.
Michael Desmond, a professor of architecture at LSU and director of graduate studies in the College of Art and Design, has for years extensively researched the role of architecture in society.
Notre Dame is almost 800 years old, is identified with Paris probably more than any other structure, and has been for most of those years in history. Everybody that goes wants to visit the cathedral, maybe the Eiffel Tower, but the cathedral is much, much older. And it anchors the place.
For generations, Notre Dame has been a place of pilgrimage and prayer. And even as religion in France has declined for decades, it remained the beating heart of French Catholicism, open every day for Mass. Said one Parisian, "It's a symbol. I mean, every time I drive to work, I see the cathedral. It's part of the landscape. We wouldn't imagine Paris without Notre Dame." Louisiana is rooted in French culture, and South Louisiana, unlike other areas of the South, is a place where Catholics are the norm, and religion and culture are one. The proof is easy to find. Take a drive down Highway 1. As you pass through cities and towns, large and small, you will see one predominant theme: large, imposing Catholic churches, cathedrals, even in the smallest places, like Labadeville, population 1,800. There you will find St. Philomena, as much a part of the landscape as the dirt itself.
I think it's a part of any tour down Bayou Lafourche and down the Mississippi River to visit. It certainly used to be. So many of those churches were built before the levee system, so that you would see them. They would be the marker. And you see them, since they're tall, the spires are tall, you see them across the landscape. They become guideposts in more than just the spiritual sense, in an actual physical sense.
Consider this timeline. Notre Dame had been the center of Paris for more than 300 years, before the explorer La Salle proclaimed the heart of modern-day America as Louisiana, in honor of King Louis of France. That was in 1682. Desmond says, given the role of Parisians in the founding of Louisiana, it is certain that many of our ancestors attended Mass at Notre Dame. And try on this comparison of two cities, New Orleans and Paris. Paris has Notre Dame and the Eiffel Tower. New Orleans, St. Louis Cathedral, and the Superdome, a pair of very different yet iconic structures that symbolize each city. The cathedral in Jackson Square was the first non-apocalyptic view of New Orleans the world saw in the days following Katrina. There was President George W. Bush speaking to Americans, and there was St. Louis Cathedral, proving that life in some ways did go on as before. Anything that we learned from this?
Well, we learned something about the depth of our common bonds, certainly. And the fact that so many people have expressed so much feeling and were touched by this, Catholics and not, around the world, is very moving, of course. You know, we share so much. I mean, in human societies, we construct so much of the world we live in, and then we rely on it as though it's the given part of the world. You know, as though that's reality, and it becomes our reality. And to have it challenged like this, or you remember where you were when the World Trade Towers were hit. Everybody seems to remember the same kind of thing. You don't expect the fabric of reality to be destroyed, to collapse, and when it does, it's something about this terrifying.
Meantime, the French president is making a pledge to rebuild Notre Dame within 5 years, making it more beautiful, he says, than before.
The state's last death penalty execution happened 9 years ago. A 2014 lawsuit challenging the drugs used and the state's ability to carry them out has put all executions on hold.
This session, there's a push to secure the drugs to keep the death penalty intact, and there's a push to abolish it, with voters having the final say. This month, Louisiana Public Square brings together those for and against as we explore the penalty of death.
1 out of 25 from Louisiana death row exonerated, 4%, and that's the highest per capita in the United States. It's not okay. I don't think conservatives want to execute innocent people, and they certainly don't want to spend a tremendous amount of money doing something that doesn't work and actually gets the wrong result.
In reference to studies that show 4 out of 5 death row inmates in Louisiana are later found, or people who were sentenced to death in Louisiana are later reversed, I think that that's just indicative in our argument for the death penalty, because it is demonstrative of the effort that the criminal justice system goes through to make sure that when someone's put to death, that that person has had an ultimately fair trial and a fair process, and due process has been served.
The penalty of death will air Wednesday, April 24th at 7 p.m. on LPB. You can find more information about the episode on lpb.org/public square. This week, LPB and the Rotary Club of Baton Rouge honored 8 outstanding students.
Students who've overcome adversity, kept a high GPA, and given back to their communities. They were applauded at the 24th Annual Young Heroes Award Banquet. This year's Young Heroes began their week volunteering to help Baton Rouge's Baskets of Hope charity. They were next recognized themselves at LPB by Baton Rouge Mayor Sharon Weston Broome. After a tour of LPB and memory-making photo ops, the Young Heroes headed to the campus of LSU. There, they got a tour of massive Tiger Stadium and an up-close look at LSU's Center for River Studies, located on the water campus. Next, it was on to the old governor's mansion, where they received their Young Heroes proclamations from Governor John Bell Edwards. Then our group was surprised by all the gifts they received, including a new laptop computer. You can help celebrate these role models Friday night, May 3rd at 8 on LPB, and May 25th on WLAE in New Orleans.
And congrats to all those great students.
Absolutely.
Well, that's our show for this week. Happy Easter, everyone.
For all of us at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Moreau.
I'm Natasha Williams.
Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Support comes from
Entergy provides much more than power. We support science and engineering at local schools to build a brighter path to better jobs and help prepare the next generation. Because together, we power life. Entergy.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.